Call this meeting of Planning and Zoning Commission for Monday, April the 1st, 2024. Time is 6:32. All right. We have a quorum. Everybody's here. So that leads us to the introduction agenda of format of hearing. Turn it over to staff.
Thank you, Chair. So for each item tonight, we'll have a call to order followed by staff report. After that, we'll have the applicant's presentation. From there, we'll have public comments in support or opposition. At that time, please state your name and address for the record. Be brief and to the point within a 3-minute time frame. Afterwards, commission and staff will have their discussion. The commission will vote to recommend approval as presented, approval with conditions, denial of the request, or to table the item. And all items that are being heard tonight will go to City Council for their consideration on Monday, April 22nd. So with that, we've got order of the agenda. We've got the consent that has 2 items on it, excusal of absence for March 18th, and then approval of minute meetings also from March 18th. And then we have 4 new items on for new business. We'll have a conditional use permit for a child daycare business within the OP district. This is at 3801 Liberty Drive. Then we'll have a wireless communication tower within the M1 district. This is at 3326 South Main Street. Following that, we'll have a request for a gas station within the general business district at the corner of McCard and Max Road. And then last, we'll have an auto repair major that is located on 1415 Broadway Street. And with that, I'll turn it back to you, Chair, to do the consent agenda. And the consent agenda just has the approval of minutes.
Okay, can I have a motion and a second for consent agenda?
Commissioner Hendricks, I make a motion.
Commissioner McCatherine, I second.
Okay, no discussion? Call for the vote. All those in favor, sign by raising your right hand. All those opposed, same sign. Carries 7-0. That brings us to new items removed from the consent agenda. There was none. New business, consideration and possible action, conditional use permit application CUP 24-03, public hearing, a request by Mona Malone, applicant on behalf of Jerome Karam, owner, for approval of a conditional use permit for a child daycare center use within the office and professional district on approximately 6.309 acres of land located at 3801 Liberty Drive. Can I have a motion and a second?
Commissioner Fortes' motion to approve.
Commissioner Kuhn, second.
All right, that brings us to the staff report.
Thank you, Chair. Let me introduce Florence Boaku to provide the staff report. Florence, take it away.
Thank you, Martin. Good evening, Chair and members of the Commission. The first CUP is a CUP for a child daycare business just down the road from us at 3801 Liberty Drive. There are no public comments in favor or against the CUP. On the screen is the zoning map for the location. It's zone office and professional districts, and it's surrounded by a mix of single-family residential 2 and single-family residential 1. The future land use designates the property as medium density residential, which does not support the proposed use. However, a zone change was just approved for the site make it more consistent with the existing uses on the site. The existing uses on the site are commercial. Just to give you a little information about the context, the site is surrounded mostly by single-family residential homes, and then it's also to the southwest of the property is Independence Park. And just to give you a brief history of the property, it was annexed into the city in 1960. And then the property was developed with two buildings. There's one larger building and a smaller building. It was originally developed as a school. And then after the school was closed in 2011, a conditional use permit was approved for an institution of religious, educational, and of philanthropic nature to occupy the site. And so this brought in the adult daycare that is currently on the site. More recently, if you can remember, just about a couple of weeks ago, the property was rezoned from single-family residential to office and professional district. And the office and professional district requires a conditional use permit to approve the use. So here on your screen are two views of the site. This is directly across from the street across from Liberty Drive. So again, it's just down the street from us. This is the site plan showing the two buildings. There's a larger building and there's a smaller building. The proposed daycare business is going to be on the second floor of the larger building. Again, the red rectangle shows where the proposed daycare is going to be. Typically, CUPs are granted for specific suites, but in this case, the applicant would like to apply for the CUP for the whole site, just to provide future flexibility so that if any daycare wanted to locate in any of the other spaces, they could easily do so without coming back for a conditional use permit. So looking at the review criteria, as mentioned earlier, the future land use is medium density residential, which does not support the proposed use. However, as mentioned, we recently went through a zone change for the site to make it more consistent with the existing use on the site. The site has frontage on Liberty Drive, which is a collector street, and once the CUP is approved, staff would be reviewing the permit to make sure that it's consistent with the requirements of the Unified Development Code and would meet the parking and landscaping requirements. So also looking at the criteria for approval of the CUP, again, is not consistent with the future land use plan. However, the proposed use is consistent with the zoning, and then staff would ensure that any potential nuisance from the daycare use would be mitigated based on the requirements of the Unified Development Code. And staff does not anticipate any excess traffic, and the applicant is also not planning to expand the building. So the building footprint will remain the same. So based on staff analysis, staff has determined that the proposed use meets the criteria established in the Unified Development Code for approval of a conditional use permit, and it's also consistent with the existing uses. So the existing uses on the site are a child daycare and an adult daycare, and so this would be the proposed daycare business, child daycare business would be consistent with the existing use on the site. So based on that, staff is recommending approval for the requested conditional use permit. That concludes staff report. Thank you.
Thank you, Florence. That brings us to the applicant presentation. Is the applicant present?
Good evening. Thank you all for your time, dedication to our city. We really do appreciate your time, as well as staff. Staff has been amazing guiding us through this process. We really appreciate that. As Florence mentioned, there is an existing adult daycare and there is an existing daycare downstairs in the larger gymnasium building. So ever since Carden Jackson School moved out of that building, the upstairs has never been used and is in quite a bit of disrepair. So the third daycare, the third business on the property, is proposed to go into the second floor of the gymnasium building. We do feel like it's consistent with the uses that have been in the building and they want to continue in the building. The owner, Jerome Karam, was ill tonight. He's usually here with me. He apologized for not being able to be here, but he's a phone call away if we need to give him a call with any questions. The fact he is asking for the CUP to cover the entire property, again, just to kind of keep the property occupied and in good repair, we would like to have the flexibility in the future. One daycare moves out, another daycare can move in. The differences have been the existing businesses were only nonprofit. And so the zone change in the CUP allow now for the actual business of a child care, but it will operate and function and look exactly like what has been on the property all this time. So the owner is aware he will have to make significant improvements, definitely interior of the building, even as far as probably putting in an elevator. It looks like they're probably going to have some additional parking, things like that, that they will take care of. Other than that, there is no expansion of the buildings or anything like that that is proposed. So please let me know if you have any questions at all. Thank you.
Ms. Malone, for the record, would you please state your address as well?
Yes, I'm sorry. Mona Malone, 4303 Waterfall Cove, Pasadena, Texas, 77505.
Thank you, ma'am. Moving to the persons wishing to speak for or against this proposal. Asking a second time, anyone wishing to speak for or against this proposal? Third and final time, anyone wishing to speak for or against? Seeing none, that moves us to commission's discussion. Anybody?
Martin, and maybe you can, or when you get engineering involved, but I just had a question about parking and traffic. It's already been discussed. It probably needs additional parking, which means more cars. With another daycare, you're looking at peak drop-off in the morning, pick-up in the afternoon. Talk about having an 80-foot right-of-way, but there's maybe 28 feet of actual paving out there with urban, with ditches on either side. I'm just worried about, are you confident that this fully loaded schools, all the schools running together, aren't going to negatively impact the neighborhood there? Obviously, Liberty into Lizer is an interesting little curve with the stop sign in the park. It seems like you're setting something up that's going to, be a problem.
So from a traffic and development standpoint, whenever the new use comes in, that additional use will have to have parking applied to it because that portion of the building has essentially gone abandoned and hasn't had a use in it for things going on behind me. So as I was saying, with that upper floor basically not having had an occupant for a long time, the site will need to be brought into compliance, and that's part of what Ms. Malone was talking about with the site improvements. So the site improvements include the parking, the dumpster screening, and the buffering that's required for a non-residential use against a residential property. When it comes to traffic, they will of course go through the development review process, and traffic is one of the concerns that engineering responds to. With the improvements that are happening at Broadway and Liberty, the alteration of the turning lanes there, we know that there are some configuration changes that will happen. But as far as improvements to John Lizer and what we anticipate coming from Pearland Parkway going east, I'd have to get Francisco to chime in on that.
And we will also request the traffic impact analysis worksheet. That will let us know the trips generated that will be added with this addition.
So a TIA would be, you see it as a requirement already. We wouldn't need to add it as a condition.
I'm sure it's not working. Not necessarily. So we'll request a worksheet, which will let us know the trips generated. And then if it impacts the need for a TIA, we'll request one.
And a part of that scope may entail that they have alternating opening times, so that way they can clear out the parking lot a little easier and relieve and reduce some of that impact onto John Lizer, because completely respect and understand those ditches are pretty wild.
Thanks, Martin. Thanks. I'm good, sir.
Anyone else? Okay, call for the vote. All those in favor, sign by raising your right hand.
Excuse me, before we do that, there was a condition requested by the applicant. So I don't know if y'all want to discuss that as being a part of your recommendation before making the full vote. Just want to bring that up. Otherwise, y'all can continue with the vote.
So if we just voted outright, it would be just to allow the daycare?
It would be just for the daycare at that particular location. It wouldn't be for the whole site.
Okay, and she put the amendment, she did ask for the entire site.
So the applicant is requesting for the entire site, correct?
Okay. All right, Lawrence, lead us through this.
Does the notice include the entire site that was published in the paper asking the public to come out and speak?
We wrote the notice for the entire acreage of parcel 1. So it's the full 6.309 acres.
You're looking at the agenda notice, but we publish a note, we send a notice to people within an abutter?
It should have the same, I'll look at it real quick, but yeah, the owner notification used the same full legal description.
Okay, so 3801 is only the Carter Jackson Auditorium, which is parcel 1. But we can't expand the area that was notified for. So if parcel 1,
Parcel 1 and parcel 2 are in the legal notice.
So the request is for a CUP for childcare on the entire site. It's the only change.
the notice that I see on the agenda is for parcel 1. I'm hearing Martin say parcel 1 and 2. Oh, it's further down.
5 lines.
Okay, it wasn't separated in the paragraph. Okay. All right. So there was a motion to approve by Vice Chair Henry Fuertes, seconded by Member Brad Kuhn. So if we wanted to include, if y'all were so inclined, we would take a motion to amend to include it for the entire property. And if the same two people are agreeable, then we could do it with one step, but true parliamentary procedure would require a two-step process.
I have a quick question. But Lawrence, does that So that doesn't, it would include all of the property except for building A, right? Because on here it's saying the applicant is also requesting that the CUP apply to the full 6.3 acres, but the entire site is actually 8,
Correct. So they left out the 1.981.
which is
because
the building A, right?
No. 1.981 is that.
Oh, on the left, I'm
left.
sorry. Okay, my bad.
And that
I see it
parcel
now.
was left as R2 zoned property.
Yeah, I see it now.
So they're just asking for the
Gotcha.
commercially zoned portion.
And how does staff feel about that, that additional request?
It's unusual because typically whenever we do a conditional use permit, it's for a building or for a suite. Recognizing that both buildings are used for child daycare-like things right now, we're not in opposition to it. Really and truly, if the use was moved out of building B and moved into building A, it would be a reduction in the square footage that is occupying. Of course, then you would have the opportunity for a new child daycare facility to move into space B, but it doesn't. It's not coming up as a real negative, but it is outside of our typical things that we would see within a conditional use permit, which is why this is a little unique.
It would increase their traffic generator numbers. So that is
Correct. And-
something they'll have to look at.
And we would look
And
at
then
that
it
on
could
a
trigger
case-by-case.
additional TIA by adding in that square footage or child count.
Correct.
Okay, so if I were to make an amendment to the original motion, let me know if I'm incorrect here. I'd like to amend the original motion to approve, to include the additional acreage to allow flexibility in the future locations within the 2 existing buildings on the property.
That would cover it. I was thinking the entirety of the OP zoned property.
Okay.
If you wanted to limit it
And the
to those
additional
2.
property to the, well, it's at an angle here. The additional 1.981 acres to include the entire tract,
The entire tract zoned OP.
the entire tract that is zoned OP.
Yes, sir. I think we understand what you mean from that. It's specific enough.
Commissioner Kuhn, and I'll second that.
Okay, any more discussion? Okay, all those in favor, sign by raising your right hand. All those opposed, same sign. Carries 7-0. That moves us to considering possible action for conditional use permit application 24-10, a request of Vincent Gerard and Associate applicants on behalf of Bill and Nancy Williams, owner, for approval of a conditional use permit to replace an existing wireless communication tower with a 150-foot tall wireless communication tower within the light industry M1 district on approximately 9.140 acres of land located at 3226 South Main Street, Pearland, Texas. That brings us to staff report.
Motion to approve.
Can I have a motion to approve, please?
So moved.
Commissioner Henrik, second.
That takes us to staff.
Thank you, Chair. Once again, Florence, take it away.
Thank you, Martin. This conditional use permit is to replace an existing 140-foot wireless telecommunications tower with a 150-foot tower on approximately 9.14 acres of land. And this is in the light industrial district. we did not receive any comments for or against the proposed CUP. As stated earlier, the site is zoned light industrial. It's surrounded mostly by other light industrial zone properties with a general commercial zone property across the road from Main Street. The future land use designates the property as light industrial, which supports the proposed use. So diving into the site, this area shows the surrounding uses around the site. It's mostly surrounded by undeveloped land. To the south, there's a mixed industrial use, and then to the west of the property is a tire sales business. So just a brief history of the property. The property was annexed into the city in 1960. The existing tower was developed before 2000, and since then the rest of the site has remained undeveloped. The applicant is in the process of platting this property. It's required to be platted before the development of the new tower. So these are images from Main Street towards the existing tower. So you can see the existing 140-foot tower that would be replaced. So this is the site plan for the tower. The green dot shows the existing location of the tower, and then the blue dot shows the proposed location of the tower. And it's essentially going to share the same pad site, but the applicant is going to develop a driveway to connect it to Main Street. We are also requiring the applicant to screen off the base of the tower where they have other supporting equipment. It's going to be screened off with a masonry wall and some landscaping. This is the elevation of the tower showing the 150-foot tall tower, which will be replacing the previous one, which is slightly shorter. It also shows the masonry wall and some of the equipment that support the tower. One of the requirements for CUPs for telecommunication towers is to locate the towers around the city from the proposed tower. And so this is what the map is showing. The proposed tower is shown in green, and all the existing towers around the city are shown in red. Again, we did look at the proximity of the proposed tower to other towers within a mile, 2 miles, and 3 miles of the proposed site. Within a mile, there's one tower which is shown with a red dot. And then within 2 miles, there are 8 towers, 2 of which are located outside of all 8 are located within the city limits. And then within 3 miles, there are 11 towers, 2 of which are located outside the city limits. So to the review criteria, based on what we saw earlier, the future land use designates the property as light industrial, and this supports the telecommunication tower use. It's also along a major thoroughfare that is Main Street, with sufficient width to support the tower, and staff will be reviewing this to make sure that it meets the standards of the Corridor Overlay District as well as the light industrial zoning designation. Then looking at the criteria outlined in the Unified Development Code for approval of conditional use permits, it is consistent with the comprehensive plan, and it's also consistent with the zoning of the site. With the existing tower and the new tower, Staff does not anticipate any adverse impacts or does not anticipate any increased traffic due to the replacement of the tower. And so staff has established that it meets the criteria established for approval of conditional use permits. It's also consistent with the future land use as well as the thoroughfare plan and the zoning designation of the site. And based on that, staff is recommending approval of the proposed conditional use permit. That concludes staff report. Thank you.
Okay, that brings us to the applicant's presentation. Please state your name and address for the record, please.
Thank you, Commissioners. My name is Vince Hemier with Vincent Gerard and Associates. Address is 1705 Carlotta Lane, Austin, Texas. Yeah, this is a site that was built a long time ago. It has been structurally upgraded as much as possible. We can't do anything with it. We're going to have to replace it. AT&T is on this site. They're a FirstNet provider. AT&T can't put their 5G antennas on there until we drop this thing and swap it out to that. Dish Communications is also on there. Florence mentioned the masonry wall has to go in. We're going to try to landscape it as much as possible on the front. And the driveway substandards, we're going to have to probably talk to TxDOT to get that driveway upgraded, put a little turnaround area in there. We're not increasing any of the impervious cover except maybe about 100, 200 feet of the driveway area. So what we're doing also is we're having to plat the track, dedicated right away from Main Street, which pushes the setback back into some equipment and also to the existing monopole, but thankfully we're moving the monopole back behind that new setback, so we should be okay. Generally, if you have any questions, you know how much we rely on these things nowadays. You just don't want to lose a site. We want to just put another one up right next to it for AT&T and Dish Network, and the additional height will allow a third carrier, and that we have space for a third carrier too. So questions for me? Be happy to answer them.
Thank you, sir. If we have any questions, we'll get back with you.
Thank you.
All right, that brings to the portion of persons wishing to speak for or against this proposal. I ask a second time, anyone asking to speak for or against this proposal? Seeing none, third and final time, asking to speak for or against this proposal. Seeing none, that moves us to commission's discussion.
I'll go. I think you're replacing a tower where it is. So, I mean, we've all been driving by. There's not something new. It's only 10 feet. But I do, and we don't need an answer, but a thought about future. I mean, I see this as something that we're going to keep dealing with, right? More towers need to be replaced. At what point do we max out on our height allowance, right? Because I feel like towers will go taller than what we want, apparently. So I think maybe if staff could just look into that. There's, obviously this is a good place for if you're going to go up 10 feet, that's fine. But I think we need to start thinking about the relationship of tower height towards uses and residential uses especially. And when the next one or next two or next three come in, when they want to get 160, 170, 180, at what point do we say that's enough? But otherwise, I think right now for this one it's fun.
From a Planning and Zoning Commission history standpoint, years ago, and I'm going to say years ago, probably 2007 to 2008, 9, somewhere around there, we looked at cell towers very closely. We were pretty harsh with cell towers. One of the things I remember is that we asked them to co-locate it, for a lack of a better word. I think even an example of that, I believe the city tower off of Cullen back there, by the police department, I believe we put, or there's cell phone tower equipment on that water tower. Or I think there was plans to. I'm good. I'm seeing somebody shaking their head. Yes. So what I appreciate about this one is that you're actually with the 10-foot expansion, you're actually going to be able to utilize another carrier. It said kind of potentially and I hope you do. And that's what we ask the applicants to do. If you were coming in for a new tower, we'd ask, can you co-locate on a new one? And I'm happy that you're making room for the next need. I did have a question. Somebody asked me if the AT&T was going to get better in the area, and from your comments, I'm assuming that's a yes. Fantastic. Duly noted. Thank you, sir.
The only thing I had to say is, with this technology and stuff, we've all become dependent upon it. And, as far as height regulations and stuff like that, I think that's really going to be something that we're going to have to look at as the technology develops. We may have to go higher in order to get the same type of quality of reception and such that we have now. So, that's just something that we're going to have to look at in the future. But if that's it, then I think let's call for the vote. All those in favor, sign by raising your right hand. All those opposed, same sign. Carries 7-0. I know it. That moves us to consideration and possible action, conditional use permit application 24-11. Public hearing, a request by Alan Mueller, applicant on behalf of MMSN Enterprise of Texas, number 2, LLC. Represented by Nick Montamia, owner, for approval of conditional use permit, CUP, for gas station use within the general business district on approximately 2.1804 acres of land, located at northwest corner of McHard Road and Max Road, Pearland, Texas. Can I have a motion and a second, please?
Commissioner Kuhn, I'll carry that motion.
Commissioner Dugas, second.
We have a motion and a second that takes us to the staff report.
Thank you, Chair. And I'm going to give it just a moment. We good? You good? Okay, cool. So as discussed, this is a request for a gas station to be located within the general business district. Staff sent out notices to everyone within 200 feet that were located inside of the city limits 10 days prior to the meeting. And has not received any written comment or phone calls about this request. So you can see the highlighted property here on the north side of McHard Road, west of Max, and that blue line indicates property that is outside of the city limits. So property gets to be in the outside in Brookside Village when you get just on the east side of Max there. So here on the future land use map, you can see that the classification for the property is largely suburban residential, and then the corner there is a residential retail node. If you recall from the prior, or I guess I should say the current comprehensive plan, that residential retail node was kind of one of the smaller areas where a lighter commercial use would be appropriate. Taking a look again at the land uses that are generally around the lot, you've got a large lot residential to the north, large lot residential in Brookside Village to the east, some undeveloped property on the other side of McHard, and then a large lot residential just south of that. So the subject property was annexed from the city in 1998. The site was developed with a single-family residence in 1953, but was demolished between 2020 and 2022 to make way for the road widening, and the site has remained undeveloped since then. The site was originally a part of a larger piece of property that was broken into by that acquisition for McCard Road. So here is a view of the property, kind of looking from the southeast corner diagonally at the corner lot there. This is the proposed site plan that they have provided with the convenience store and then the gas pumps out in front, and then an additional retail area that would not be a part of the conditional use permit. Again, the convenience store and the retail area are allowed by right within the general business district. It's strictly the sale of gasoline that requires the conditional use permit within the GB zoned property. Here are a couple renderings of the site that the applicant has provided. And this is an alternative view. And this is a view with their proposed landscaping. So as always, staff has provided a location map for gas stations. You can see that there is one just on the edge of that 1 mile radius, 13 within 2 miles, 5 of which are located outside of the city limits, and then 29 within 3 miles, 13 of which are outside of city limits. So as mentioned, this property has a portion which is included in the residential retail node. This type of future land use is intended to provide a limited retail and personal service opportunity for customers that are typically within that residential neighborhood. The proposed gas station use is not compatible with this designation, as it's a more intense use than what the residential retail node was envisioned for. Otherwise, the rest of the review criteria ends up being a positive for approval. And then coming to the criteria for approval, we feel that both the future land use and the character of McCard Road will generally change with this proposed development, as we have essentially bookended McCard Road with gas stations. Last council, there was an extension for the gas station at McCowa and McCard, and then previously the commission has seen the gas station at Cullen and McCard, which is kind of the other end of that section of McCard Road, both of which have gained approval and are either in the ground or working on going through the permitting process. And that with this new McCard Road, we're trying to maintain it as a relief for Broadway, and not to provide significant additional traffic to that roadway. So as such, and with the staff analysis, we find that it meets 5 out of 7. But again, this area being for a lighter intensity use, we just feel that the proposed gas station is not compatible with that residential retail node, and especially with the very low density of single-family residential properties that are immediately abutting it, and also within this section of McCard Road. So this slide generally covers what I've already talked about, with the allowances for gas stations that have already been either permitted or that are already in the ground. With all of that, staff recommends denial of this requested conditional use permit. However, if the commission decides to recommend approval of the gas station by approving the CUP, then staff recommends the following conditions to be added to the approval. Number one, that the exterior building facades be developed in substantial conformance with the materials depicted in the facade renderings. Number two, that the columns supporting the fuel station canopy be wrapped with a masonry material that's consistent with the architectural element of the principal building. And you'll notice these are the common and typical conditions that get added with conditional use permits. There's no additional recommendations on landscaping, as McCard Road is in the corridor overlay district, so the gas station already has to meet those minimum standards. But with that, I will turn it back to you, Chair.
Thank you. That brings us to the applicant's presentation. State your name and address for the record, please. And just for the record, Commissioner Fuentes has recused himself from this item.
Martin, can you flip over to the presentation here? All right, thank you for bearing with my technical difficulties. Alan Mueller, 1408 Bent Lake Lane here in Pearland, representing the owner of the property, Nick Modametti. We also have Mr. Imran here this evening, who is one of the operators and owners of the gas station, should it be able to move forward. So again, some of the information I'm going to present may be a little bit redundant, but if you just bear with me for patience, I think it's kind of important to make sure that we kind of paint the full picture here. So again, this is at the northwest corner of McCard and Max Road. So just a little bit more about the location and the orientation. Again, some of this has been covered, but you know, the site that's remaining there is only about a little over 2 acres. It's an odd-shaped, you know, triangular remnant that was left over from the taking of McCard Road. And so again, it's kind of an odd shape. It has a short depth north to south, even on the east side up against Max, it's short, and then it obviously gets even shorter as you go. So it's kind of a difficult track to work with. It's, you know, the small size and the odd shape really limits the potential uses that might be able to go on this site. And has been noted, you know, the current zoning is general business, which means the convenience store and any number of other commercial type of uses, general business uses, could go on this site, you know, with no action by the commission, just you know, just a building permit. So it's really only the gas station component that requires the CUP. But since it's already zoned general business, there's any number of things that could be developed there regardless. Drilling into the site plan a little bit, I think the engineers that are working on this project have done a really good job of being creative and trying to meet all the regulations of the city on a challenging piece of property. As Martin noted, we do have the McCard Road overlay. So on the front or the bottom side of the drawing, we have the 30-foot landscape reserve that sets back the parking, and then also the landscaping that's required within that reserve. The driveway on McCard would be at least 350 feet from the Max Road intersection, which is a requirement, and it would meet that requirement. On the north side of the property, again, basic requirement when you have general business up against something that's not general business is the 6-foot masonry wall that would be along the north line of the property, as well as a 25-foot landscape reserve along the north side of the property. And so that sets the north line for the building. As we talked about, we're proposing to have masonry columns on the canopy of the gas station. And then 2 things that came up when we had the pre-development meeting with the city was the dumpster and the air station, you know, that comes with gas stations, that they really wanted to see that not in front of the building. And so to the left of the building, we have the dumpster enclosure and the air station. So we're keeping those facilities behind the front plane of the building as was requested. This meets all of the parking requirements and all of the fire department access requirements, so there's no issues there. The only potential variance that we have is on the Max Road driveway spacing. The typical requirement on Max Road would be 165 feet, but because of the short depth of the tract and then the 25-foot setback on the north side, and then just to get a normal-sized building, we've pushed the driveway to the north just as far as we can, and that it comes up about 27 feet short of meeting the 165 feet. So that's really the only thing that doesn't meet all of the criteria of the site. Again, this has been talked about before, but again, we're here for the conditional use permit. The convenience store aspect is allowed by right, as would many other things be. So it's really the gas station that requires the CUP. And I know you all know this, but just to reiterate, you know, really the purpose for the CUP is that, generally speaking, the use that we're talking about, you know, is compatible with that zoning category. But because of the nature of that use, you know, you want to look at it with a little more scrutiny to make sure it works in that specific location, and maybe put some conditions on it to make sure that it doesn't cause a problem. And just kind of following P&Z and council over the years, you know, the real issue with gas stations has been the proliferation, and the spacing has been discussed. So I coined the term gas station density. So looking at gas station density, I did my own little study and drove Broadway from 288 to Friendswood, about 10.5 miles, 21 gas stations. So that works out to about 2 gas stations per mile, or on average about 1 every half mile. And so I think most people have come to the conclusion that that's too dense for Pearland. You know, I tried to find a standard to say, okay, what is the right density? But it really varies on the population and the density of the population and just all sorts of other factors. But just kind of for discussion purposes, I said, well, let's kind of look at what if you cut that in half, said 50% of that is more reasonable. So you have 1 gas station every mile. Maybe that makes more sense. And to me, that kind of made sense. It kind of rang true, because when you're doing thoroughfare planning, you space your thoroughfares about 1 mile apart. So that logic kind of made sense. So if you apply that logic to McCard, the site that is there in the middle at Max Road, it's, has been noted, exactly 1 mile to the existing station there at Cullen. The station at McCalla, which was approved, I think, originally about 3 years ago, but still not built, 2.3 miles away. If you go south to Broadway, the closest station is about 1.5 miles. So it's, if you look at it from a lot of different perspectives, the spacing to this location makes a lot of sense. And then if you look at McCard as a total, again, there's only 2 existing gas stations on McCard right now. There's the one at Cullen, and then there's one at 288. And so if you looked at McCard all the way from 288 to Pearland Parkway, that's about 7 miles. Even if all 4 of those stations were built, the 2 existing and the 2 proposed, that's only 0.57 gas stations per mile, which is a 70% reduction over what you're seeing on Broadway. So I think by a lot of measures, we're not contributing to proliferation by placing this gas station at this location, and it meets some real logical spacing requirements. It's a convenience to the local residents, and it helps to divert traffic off of 518, which was really the purpose of building McCard Road in the first place. I won't repeat all of this because it's in your packet. This was in our letter that we submitted with the application. And just with respect to the staff, we disagree on the analysis on 2 points, which is not uncommon, but that's okay. So I just kind of wanted to talk a little bit about the first and the third points in terms of conformance with the comprehensive plan and compatibility. Again, I understand, you know, the issue with the residential retail node, but I guess I would make the argument that, you know, a gas station is really a convenience for the local residents that are there, and it keeps people from having to travel a further distance for that service, which just about everybody needs, you know, very frequently. I'd also say, you know, if you look at the draft future land use plan, the draft comprehensive plan, this area is shown to be a lot more dense in the future. It's actually shown to have, mixed-use residential as well as compact residential in this general area. So I guess my argument would be is that this gas station is not changing the neighborhood. The building the road is what changed the neighborhood. And I think anybody can expect when you have a brand new road like this over time, you can expect that the neighborhood's going to change and it's going to get more dense over time. If you just look at many other examples, that's just the way things work. So I guess that's our point, is that we're not being an intrusion. We're just contributing to really what the purpose of the road was in the first place, and we're going to be there to serve those future residents. As far as proposed conditions, I guess we'd look at it a little bit differently, that we would agree on the masonry wrap. We proposed that. We've proposed the dumpster and the air station being behind the building. I think those are relevant. Again, in my view, because the conditional use permit is for the gas station and not for the store, I don't think that the facade requirements on the store are a relevant nexus to the gas station component. So in our view, we're trying to keep the conditions related to the gas station and not necessarily to the store. So masonry wrap on the columns, dumpster, and air station behind the front plane. Also it really isn't a condition, but maybe just an acknowledgement that we recognize that in order to build this site plan, we do need that little bit of a variance ultimately on the driveway spacing after we complete the full TIA. And then also just really more of a notice, because it doesn't require separate approval, but just so everybody knows, because of the tight space, we might end up with a vertical wall detention pond, but it would have all the appropriate safety and access measures that would be required. So in summary, again, in our view, meets the criteria. It exceeds a reasonable standard of spacing to other facilities. We think it's a very well thought out plan that productively utilizes an odd-shaped piece of property and only requires that one variance on the driveway spacing. We see it as a convenience to area residents. We think in the long term it reduces vehicle miles traveled, which is a valid goal. It reduces the distance that people have to travel to reach a gas station. Because right now, for the most part, with a couple of exceptions, if you want to get gas, you're going to Broadway. And so it keeps traffic off of Broadway, and ultimately helps to fulfill a city goal of diverting traffic off of Broadway. So appreciate your attention, and be happy to answer questions at the appropriate time.
Thank you. That brings us to the persons wishing to speak for or against this proposal. Go to the podium and state your name and address, please.
Good evening, and thank you for allowing us to speak. My name is Sonia Serrano. I live at 1714 Max Road, where I have resided for over 40 years, way before it was annexed by the city. For those of you who do not know who I am, I have dedicated my professional life to the education, safety, and welfare of the children of this community, both as a principal of 3 campuses and as assistant superintendent supervising 8 campuses. I am here to speak in opposition to conditional use permit 2411, where the applicant plans to construct a gas station in conjunction with the convenience store and the retail space. The information you included regarding public hearings states that the more individuals that speak for or against a topic, the greater impact on your decision. Yet I find it interesting that only 2 letters were mailed to families that are affected by it. I am sure that you did do due diligence. Moreover, however, the most critical for me is the safety of my family and of my property. Upon researching the association between gas stations and crime, I have learned that convenience stores and gas stations tend to have cash on hand, sell and allow carry-out of alcohol, and are poorly staffed. This combination provides fertile grounds for criminal activity. Moreover, the location of this particular gas station provides ample opportunity to easy getaway via McCard Road, Cullen Boulevard, and Highway 288. According to a report from the U.S. Department of Justice Bureau of Justice Statistics, cashiers working in gas stations with convenience stores have a higher risk of workplace violence than any other workplace environments, which makes them very dangerous. A study conducted by Gortham and Kennedy states that police departments characterize these businesses as stop and rob, referring to how easily criminals can steal from them. A more recent study conducted in 2022 entitled More Gas, More Crime by Boehm and colleagues indicate that gas stations are associated with higher levels of crime, higher crime count, higher property crimes, and higher crimes committed at night. While the applicant states in his request that the construction of the gas station will provide convenience to the community, he fails to mention the aforementioned evidence that gas stations would increase the probability of crime in our community. The applicant also states that this gas station will reduce traffic on 288. Presently, there are 4 gas stations on the far west area of McCard Road, closest to 288. Another point I'd like to present is that the residents can drive Magnolia or Bailey Roads to stay away from 518, yet none of this has detail or diminished traffic on 518, as you all well know. The question begs, how will one gas station change traffic in any significant way on 518? I know that you will be voting. Would you vote for a convenience store located at close to your property? Yes, but would you vote for a gas station that's located 200 feet away from your property, your family, your children, knowing that it represents a significant risk to the safety? Would you feel safe and secure knowing that the probability of violence and illegal activity has substantially increased in your area, risking the safety of your property, of your family, and of your children? I certainly do not want that for my family, my property, but especially my 4 young grandchildren who live 200 feet away from that gas station, if it's constructed. Thank you.
Please try to state your name and your address, and please try to keep it to 3 minutes.
Sir, good evening. My name is David Serrano. I'm a current resident and property owner of 1708 Max Road, and I'm speaking today in opposition to the conditional use permit 24-11 for the proposed gas station on the northwest corner of McCard Road and Max Road. I was raised in and have lived in this community for over 40 years, and I'm proud to call myself a Pearland graduate. I'm also a husband, a father, and a son to loved ones that will be negatively impacted by the construction of a gas station within 200 feet of our property that my children live, eat, and play at. My first concern is the health risk that the chemical compounds that come with a gas station bring to my family and to surrounding families. Chemicals like benzene that are harmful to human health and are known to cause nausea, cancer, anemia, and increased susceptibility to infections for people with prolonged exposure. People like my 4 young children that live within 200 feet of where these chemicals will be stored and emitted on a daily basis. A study out of France from 2003-2004 showed an association between acute childhood leukemia residing next to gas stations. According to the World Health Organization, there is no safe level for benzene. My other concern is the close proximity that our families and other residents' well water is to the proposed gas station. Water that we drink from and bathe in. Gas station storage tanks and spillage at the pumps are a dangerous source of cancer-causing agents, especially so close to sources of drinking water for nearby residents. Several significant multi-site studies of groundwater plume lengths from petroleum release sites have been conducted across the U.S. since the mid-1990s. These studies found that 90% of the spilled benzene plumes traveled approximately 350 feet, not to mention other chemical constituents that traveled over 500 feet. I personally have a well within 200 feet of that proposed location. An additional concern is the blighting impact that could occur should this station become abandoned, which has already been a years-long ongoing problem at the abandoned station on the corner of 1128 and Bailey Road. An eyesore of the community that negatively impacts property value and brings high costs to convert back to other types of properties. You guys counted 13 gas stations currently within 2 miles from the proposed location. 3 of those are less than 1.5 miles. This is not a necessity, it's not a benefit, it's not even a luxury, but it's a risk for a business that is diminishing with the changing technological climate. I hope that you understand my position, and I would also hope that if you were in my position, you would relate to the plight that having a gas station within such close proximity to our residents would cause. I strongly urge you to oppose this conditional use permit for the health and safety of your neighbors. Thank you.
Thank you. State your name and address for the record and keep it to 3 minutes, please.
Yes, sir. Cassandra Serrano. I'm at 1710 Max Road, and I've spent the last 10 years working in this community to ensure the safety and well-being of local children. I'm here today to speak out against the proposed new combination gas station and convenience store at the corner of Max Road and McCard. This location puts a gas station in my children's backyard, releasing harmful chemicals such as benzene and toluene that are known to cause leukemia and adverse effects on the nervous system for those with long-term exposure. Make no mistake, my family will be at risk of long-term exposure, whether we are enjoying our yard or sleeping in our home mere feet away from this location. As I was notified in the mail Thursday evening, that's right, Thursday before Good Friday. Also concerning is the fact that underground gasoline tanks will be near the same well that myself, my children, and my livestock drink from, cook with, bathe in, and more. I suspect there are people here today who are not concerned with the impact on just one family. So I also propose that you consider the following adverse impact to the community as a whole. According to the Department of Justice own reports, convenience store holdups account for 6% of all robberies in this nation. One successful robbery leads to repeat victimization by either the same robber or others who also find the location to be vulnerable, putting our community at increased crime risk. The easy access to 288, 518, 35, and Beltway 8 make this proposed location particularly high risk. Even the National Association of Convenience Stores notes in their own safety reports that crime is best reduced when the location has few escape routes. Additionally, I would encourage you to read multiple research analysis articles within the National Library of Medicine describing how allowing off-sale alcoholic beverages from such a location increases the risk of crime. Even more concerning are the results found in one such study indicating that children with an alcohol outlet on the route to school were more likely to be offered alcohol, tobacco, and other drugs, as well as be exposed to drug selling and drug usage. This should raise serious concern for everyone who cares for the safety and well-being of the young students at our local and very nearby Lawhon Elementary. Another safety concern when it comes to my family and fellow residents is the risk of fire explosion. According to the Department of Housing and Urban Development, U.S. fire departments handle approximately 1,000 in-service gas station fires per year. They cause an annual average of 2 deaths, 48 civilian fire injuries, and $20 million in direct property damage. By increasing the number of gas stations, the city opens more risk for adverse effects in this community. The applicant attempts to justify his proposal, stating it will be a convenience for residents. However, residents know we already have 2 convenient, well-established gas locations and a newly built Dollar General store 1 street over on Brookside Road. I find it particularly interesting that the applicant failed to mention those in his proposal. Additionally, the applicant states a gas station has already been approved at McCard and McCullough. Our community needs many things, but another gas station is not one of them. I love this community. I want to see it grow and prosper. I would welcome any business that does not carry the substantial risk associated with a gas station. Also notated, a petition started at 3 p.m. today has already garnered 52 supporting members. Can't wait to see what that looks like April 22nd. Thank you very much.
Hello, my name is Richard Everett. I live at 1709 Max Road. I didn't get anything in the mail, no pre-warning whatsoever, but I did notice the picture that was taken, that live picture was taken from my address. And I'm concerned. I have a water well that I'm very concerned about, and I concur with our neighbors. I concur with them because I've retired from the Houston Fire Department with almost 38 years of service. And I've seen accidents where the gas pumps leak. I've seen leaks. I've responded to them. I responded to a lot of the shootings, the stabbings, the deaths, everything at these convenience stores. And and have responded to a lot of chemical releases and gas leaks and spills. And it just doesn't just happen with the containers itself. I mean, they will leak. It's just a matter of when they're going to leak. But the other thing is accidental. Whenever they go to fill these things, there's times they make mistakes. They overfill them, and I've seen these things run down the streets, going down the drains, and contaminate everything. As a first responder, or former first responder, one of our main deals is to dike the area to try and stop it from spreading. By the time we're notified and get there, I mean, the gas is already spilled everywhere. So I'm mainly concerned. I see there are little kids out there. I remember when mine were small, and I look forward to the day when we have grandkids that will also be drinking from the water that's provided from our wells. And I don't think it's a good idea. I don't think we have any problem finding gas. Heck, everybody goes to Sam's anyway to go get the cheap gas over there. And we also have a Kroger store where we get the discounted gas. So to me, a gas station is not a problem. I haven't been able to see anybody that's run out of gas. I've been out here for 45 years. We haven't had a problem, actually 49 years. But I do concern myself with what could happen. We were here in 1978 when that pipeline blew up just down the road, right there on Stone Road. I was here in 1990 and actually responded to the chemical explosion we had over here on McCowell Road back in 1990. So I've seen these things happen, and I really don't want anything like that to happen in the neighborhood we live in. So I appreciate y'all's time, and just want to make sure y'all oppose this thing.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Tommy Kohler. Right now I live at 4994 FM 2403 in Alvin, Texas. I own the property on the north side of this. That's where my son lives, in that house there. And the only problem I have, and these other folks did a beautiful job telling us, is that, and a gentleman told me they're going to build a fence between my house, but I'm right next to it. So I'm worried about people coming there and, peeking over the fence, looking around the corner, because you know how that neighborhood's getting, and figuring out what they can steal and this, that, and the other thing. That's one thing. The other thing, like I said, is we're on water. I'm still on a water well out there. I was annexed in what year, 1990? We still ain't got city water or sewer, but that's another story. And I'm on a water well, though. And if this thing ever gets a leak, or like they said, they abandoned this station as they leave the stuff in the ground, and it could contaminate my well. So that's all I'm saying. Thank you.
Make sure that the green forms get to our lady, and not this time, after we get through, just make sure that they get the forms. Anyone else wishing to speak for or against this item? Second time, anyone wishing to speak for or against this item? Third and final time, anyone wishing to speak for or against this item? Seeing none, that opens it up to commission's discussion.
Can you pull up the floodplain map?
Floodplain is on the screen.
Okay, is that 500 year or?
The 500 is the blue, the 100 is the orange.
Is that
The other way around.
Okay. The 500 is orange.
Okay, yeah.
Blue is the one. I think I just said that the same way again. Francisco, say it right.
Okay, I was just curious. Thank you.
Hey, Alan, can I ask you a question? Did you speak with any of the neighbors prior to your application or during the application process?
No, sir.
Just for your clarification, it's a 200-foot notification requirement. So because of the size of the lots and the right of way, but obviously y'all heard about it and you're here and we appreciate that. But the important thing is you heard about it. I want to talk about, you talked about the nexus between the pumps and the building. If I fill up my tank, can I go inside and pay for cash for pay for my gas inside the building?
Yes.
Okay. Would the tanks be there if the building wasn't there?
Would the tanks be there?
I mean, would you build a gas station?
Probably not. Probably not.
Okay. Well, then I feel like there's a nexus between the building, which opens it up to the conditions. I also think that, I mean, from my understanding, McCard Road was built as a relief valve for 518. It wasn't built as an additional commercial corridor. Obviously, it's going to get some. It's the way it happens. But the more commercial you add to McCard, the slower the traffic goes, and the relief valve that you created goes away, right? Because you make it just as bad as what came from. So I think we need to be cautious of the development that does come or eventually comes. And then I think you talked about the gas station density, and you mentioned 518 Broadway, but it's also related to the density of the uses, right? I mean, you've got a whole lot more residential, a whole lot more commercial, a whole lot industrial that's feeding into those, whereas out here there hasn't been a lot of growth at yet, and I think from the neighbors we've heard, they seem to, their gas station demands are being met. I know in some instances I say you go with the gas station because you can add the conditions and you have some control over what's been built. It's general business. I'm assuming McDonald's could go in there at some point and put a store. There's other uses that could go in that we would have no control over the basics, right? Whereas with somebody seeking a CUP, we can add conditions on it and we can try to find a middle ground of how do we make it better. I think it's worth thinking about, and maybe somebody else has the answer on how close are we comfortable with putting gas stations next to wells. I know TCQ manages both, and they'll probably license both, but that's something. It's an interesting point to consider. But I would say if the commission does agree to move forward with it, I think the conditions at a minimum that staff has done, has asked for, need to be included, and potentially more, whether it be more landscaping. I don't know if there's safety regulations or what, but I think there needs to be some consideration. These are, yeah, it's one thing if you build a house along a portion of 518 that hasn't developed yet, you know what's coming, right? But these houses were built out there before there was a road, right? It wasn't like they said, we know someday this is going to be developed. Caroline went out there and built this road. It's a needed road, but I think it's something we need to think about is a gas station the right use for this property at this time? So I don't know the answer yet.
I would just like to thank the residents for coming out and expressing your concerns. We really appreciate it, and we love hearing your thoughts and that type of process. Personally, I'm opposed to adding more gas stations in the city of Pearland. I'm only a single vote, but we have them all over the place. And I think it was noted earlier, we have Sam's, we have Costco, we have Kroger, we have HEB, all of which offer discounts to their loyal customers. I know the area, I know where you are, I know it's rural, and having a gas station on that corner would probably impact the integrity of the community. So that's kind of my thoughts, but thank you for coming out.
I only have one thought. For sure, if we vote this gas station, or if we approve this gas station, the renderings are very nice. I mean, I would expect that we would abide by those renderings and ensure that the convenience store is constructed like that. My only other thought is, with the way that this piece of property is shaped, it gives me concern as far as that other piece of property that we had, a couple of meetings ago, a couple of months ago, where it sat there vacant forever, and then finally somebody came in and they were going to build a car wash, and then, well, because it was going to be a car wash, there was density studies and everything like that about too many car washes. But I mean, just the fact that this property is shaped like it is, it's going to be really hard to develop. I mean, I do like the way this is set up, but I too appreciate the residents coming out as well, because I'm not sure how I personally would react if a gas station was being built right next door to my house. But so we'll see. I mean, that's my only concern is that long term, what else could go here on this piece of property? Thank you.
I too would like to thank the residents for coming out. One of the things that we've sitting on this commission for a number of years is every time a gas station gets brought up, it seems to trigger everybody within, seems like a couple of miles. But, it was brought up that there are certain uses that can be built without any discussion whatsoever. And the only thing that triggers a CUP here is just the gas station component of this. So a convenience store could go in there, and as far as the statistics and stuff that y'all bring up about the crime and stuff, you still have that. You have the opportunity with the CUP to have input in what can be done out there to protect y'all. It's a hard call, because I also feel like that anyone that owns a piece of property has the right to do with their property as long as it meets certain standards. And, so I don't know. It's a tough call to make. I'm not really crazy about gas stations. I feel like that if, it's kind of like the liquor stores that we got involved with. Right after the liquor stores were approved, when it came out, it made us think that we were going to have these big, huge liquor stores like a Specs or a Wine and Spirits or whatever they're called. And but then we popped up and we had all these little mom and pops everywhere. And it seemed like we ended up having to go in there and do an amendment just to cut down on the density of those. And of course, that's slowed now. But the gas stations is something. I do agree with Commissioner McDonald. The more things that we build on McCard, we have that nature or that possibility of coming in there and slowing that area down. It was built in order to give relief over certain areas as far as traffic. And I agree with him. I think that building something like this probably would impede of what it was originally intended for. But like I said, I struggle with this one because I do feel very strongly about property rights. If this became heavily industrialized out there or commercialized out there. There's nothing to say that the family might sell out and get the big bucks. We got people on 518 right now that's trying to do that's come up here and done the same thing. So, but that's all I've got to say. But I do want to thank y'all. We do sit there, and what y'all have to say to us weighs heavily with us. So thank y'all. All right.
What is the TCEQ minimum for a gas station to a water well? Does anybody have that?
If we don't know that answer and if it can affect your decision tonight, you could approve it conditionally or recommend approval conditioned on that it meet whatever that minimum requirement is, or you could postpone it until you get that answer.
So I was just curious. I think it's going to be too close, but I think that'd be great information in the future, especially with gas stations bordering properties with water wells.
Mr. Mueller, did you happen to?
Mr. Imran is an operator. He believes it's 100 feet based on his other facilities. So and you probably know, like a typical water well, you've got to be 150 feet to like a septic tank. So somewhere in the 100 to 150 foot range is probably what we're looking at.
Some additional information I wanted to make sure that y'all hear, only because I heard a consensus that density may be an issue for you. I believe on Monday night, this last week, City Council extended the CUP for the gas station at Makawa and McCard. So that's one of the ones that was on the map. It was not yet built. I believe they had some flooding issues to work out with FEMA. Those were finally resolved, and that was the nature of the extension. So City Council did take action on that just 1 week ago. And one would think that now that those issues have been resolved, the permitting may be going forward. And then I heard in the applicant's presentation that they think they meet all of the city's requirements, except for the driveway separation requirement. And I just wanted to make sure that it's clear that this body does not grant variances for driveway separations. That would be either engineering itself, or it would have to go to the ZBA. It's not something that the CUP has the authority to do. Inside the city's Unified Development Code, it makes it very clear that the P&Z does not grant this type of variance for this type of, or that type of variance for the driveway separation. So yeah, I only mention it because I saw it in the application and in the applicant's presentation. So.
Hey Martin, is there a landscape plan other than the rendering, or is that the only one we have?
The only landscaping that we have is from that rendering. And as mentioned, one of the reasons why we didn't have additional landscaper requirement is McCard Road is already a corridor overlay district, so they're going to have to meet those minimum standards. And typically at gas station, we apply corridor overlay district regulations too.
I was just thinking about the gas station that was proposed at the Pearland Parkway and John Lizer, and they came in with that reforestation plan.
Had some significant improvements to that one.
Yeah, something, as a way to at least get some more separation from the people. I mean, even with the fence in the back, to have greater trees for noise, lights, and then on especially the east side with the neighbors, there's some large lot across the street as well, to try to create more of a buffer barrier for them as well. There's two ways to look at it, right? As a CUP, we either say it's not workable and we can't support it, or we load it up with conditions until we find it workable. So then they can decide whether, if council approves, they can decide whether they want to meet those conditions or not. That's their choice. It is, I think, concerning that there were no discussions. I know a lot of times staff in zoning cases recommends to developers and builders, that they reach out in these sort of cases to neighbors. Because you always want, it's always easier to come in here when you have support for your request than when you have opposition.
And I have not researched the separation requirements. I just wanted to follow up. I think that I've heard from 3 people, some on staff, that the TCEQ and the the Texas Administrative Code, both have it at 150 feet. I've not done that research myself. I haven't verified it, but if that is an issue for you, the ground well and the storage tank being a certain distance, it's 150 feet.
Do we know if it's meeting that requirement?
No, sir. If that's something that you think that you need prior to this, you can ask for a survey that identifies where the storage tanks are. If that's what you need as a condition of approval, know where those storage tanks are, or conditionally approve the CUP saying that any storage tanks for the gas station need to be at least 150 feet. I mean, they're going to have to do it anyhow, but you can make your CUP conditioned on them satisfying that condition, or you could postpone until you get a survey seeing that, depending on how the P&Z prefers to handle that issue. My guess is, regardless of what you do, the applicant has heard what you've had to say, and they're going to have a demonstration of where the storage tanks are and where those wells are, if it's within their power prior to it going to city council. But you can do something about that if you wanted to tonight. I just, knowing the applicant, knowing the owner and their team, I can't imagine them not following up on that homework.
Do you have a proposed hours for this gas station?
$7 a.m. to 11 p.m.
Now, are the pumps open 24 hours to be done automated?
So with their system, their pumps are only open when the stores is open. But I guess if we're looking at conditions, it might be 6 a.m. to midnight because of weekends, kind of a thing. But 6 a.m. to midnight, and the pumps are only open when the store's open.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? Any discussion? Anybody wanting to amend it?
I guess just for discussion, I'll try to pull this up here. So, a motion to approve the CUP with the conditions that as presented by staff, the exterior building facade shall be developed in substantial conformance with materials as depicted. The facade renderings, that the columns supporting the fueling station canopy shall be wrapped with a masonry material that is consistent with an architectural element of the principal building. That the landscaping, trees, is increased by 50%. And that operating hours are limited to 6 to 11 Monday through Thursday, 6 to 12 Friday, Saturday, and then whatever else to start. And that they meet all, obviously, TCEQ requirements.
Commissioner McDonald, if I could clarify, when you say the landscaping be increased by 50%, is that 50% on the corridor overlay district for the portion that abuts McCard, and then 50% from the traditional UDC requirement for the portion that's on Max, or how did you intend that?
Yes, that's 50% increase in the corridor overlay, and then 50% increase on what's required on Max and along the back fence. Because they're going 5 feet less, so they have to do landscaping too. Yeah, so increase that by 50% as well.
I think I understand, if as long as staff understands.
Mr. McDonald is talking about, or Commissioner McDonald is talking about the residential buffer requirement and increasing the minimum standard for that buffer as well.
For the green portion of it, you're not asking for a 12-foot wall and a 60-foot.
There's no greenery.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, just basically on all three sides.
And I heard that you said the trees. So the trees should be increased by 50%, wherever they are.
Yeah, basically.
Okay. Thank you for the clarification. So I think we understand what Commissioner McDonald's motion is. I did not hear a second yet.
Commissioner Kuhn, second.
All right, Lars, do we need to vote on the amendment?
Yes, sir. First,
Okay.
we would vote on the amendment. First, we need to vote for the amendment.
Okay. All right, seeing any discussion on the amendments? All right, seeing that, all those in favor of the amendments, sign by raising your right hand. All those opposed? It's 4-2 on the amendments. It carries. All right.
And then a vote as amended.
Having that,
Now you would vote on the
CUP.
on the CUP with the amendment attached.
Unless we have more amendments. Anybody else has another amendment?
Oh.
Unless somebody else had more amendments.
Yeah.
That would
Does
just
anybody
start-
else?
No.
Okay. All right. Call for the vote. Anyone wishing to approve with the amendments, sign by raising your right hand. All those opposed?
Bills.
It's 3-3.
That would be a negative recommendation because it didn't have more positive votes than negative votes. However, it still goes to City Council with that negative recommendation.
Okay.
And all of the conditions will be carried forward with that recommendation.
Okay. All right. That leads us to consideration and possible action, conditional use permit. Application CUP 24-12, public hearing, a request by James Ramirez. Oh, sorry. Got all about Commissioner Fuentes. A request by James Ramirez, applicant on behalf of Chantel Barnett Russell, owner, for approval of conditional use permit for an auto repair major use within the general business district on approximately 2.793 acres of land. General location, 1415 Broadway Street, Pearland, Texas. Can I have a motion and a second?
So moved, Commissioner Dugas.
McDonald second.
All right, that takes it to staff report.
Thank you, Chair. Once again, Florence, take it away.
Thank you, Martin. This conditional use permit is for an auto repair major use in the general commercial district. The future land use is retail, offices, and services. And we did receive 4 comments in favor of this use or this proposed CUP. The property is zoned general commercial. It's located along Broadway, and it's surrounded by general commercial along Broadway. And then to the north of the property, there's a little bit of general business, as well as a residential subdivision across the creek from the proposed location. The future land use designates this property as retail offices and services. To the north is low-density residential, retail offices and services that support the proposed auto repair use. What you have on your screen is the area of the site. It's made up of 3 existing buildings, so there's no proposed building expansion with this conditional use permit. These are 3 warehouse-like buildings along Broadway. The 4th building that forms part of that complex is also an auto repair shop. Then along Broadway, there are mixed commercial uses, and behind this property across from the creek is a residential subdivision. The subject property was annexed into the city in 1960, and then between 1983 and 1992, the existing buildings were constructed. In 2011, the City Council approved a CUP to allow, so there's an existing telecommunications tower on the property, and so there was a conditional use permit approved to allow for co-location of additional antennas on the existing cell tower. The property is currently not platted. What you have on your screen is the view of the first building. So there's 1 building directly along Broadway, and there are 2 behind that are being proposed for the auto repair. And so this is the building that is right on Broadway. And then this is a site plan showing the 3 buildings that will be used for, or would be converted into the auto repair, together with associated parking. The first building that is directly adjacent to Broadway will be used for offices, as well as parts and repair planning. And then the body shop and the paint shop will be going in the 2 buildings that are located behind the first building, away from Broadway. So just presenting a few more details about the plans. This is the office. So this is the first building directly along Broadway. And then this is a layout of the paint shop and the alignment shop. There will be interior improvements to accommodate these uses within the building. Again, we have the layout of the body shop showing openings for repair inside the building. So all the repair will be taking place inside an enclosed building. So staff did look at similar uses within 1 mile, 2 miles, and 3 miles of this location. There are 5 auto repair businesses within 1 mile of this location. There are 2 auto repair businesses there are 13 auto repair businesses within 2 miles, with 7 of them outside the Pearland city limits. And then there are 28 within 3 miles, with 18 located outside the city limits. So staff has reviewed this according to the review criteria that we have, and the retail offices and services future land use does support the auto repair use. And it's along Broadway, which is a major thoroughfare, which we believe is consistent or supports that use. And once the permits are submitted for this use, staff would make sure that the buildings, the facade, and the landscaping is brought up to standard with the requirements of the Corridor Overlay District and the General Commercial Zoning District. Staff has also reviewed this according to the criteria outlined in the Unified Development Code and has determined that it does meet almost all the criteria. We do have conditions attached to the approval of this conditional use permit, and those conditions are to minimize any adverse effects, including visual impacts on adjacent property. So we are essentially proposing some facade improvements and landscaping just to buffer this from adjacent businesses, as well as to generally upgrade the look and feel of the property. And as stated earlier, staff finds that the proposed use meets the established criteria and is consistent with the future land use as well as the zoning district requirements for the general commercial district. As such, staff is recommending approval of the proposed conditional use permit. We do have 3 conditions attached to that approval. If the commission approves this, the first one is that the facade facing Broadway shall be brought into compliance with the facade requirements of the Corridor Overlay District. And essentially, the Corridor Overlay District requires a 25% transparency, and then there are also articulation requirements that staff is recommending for this building. We are also recommending a condition of improved landscaping, and this is outside along Broadway. Broadway is in our Corridor Overlay District, and typically for new construction, we do have landscaping requirements, and so we are recommending some minimum improvement in landscaping along Broadway. Then there's also an existing barbed wire fencing that is along the sides of the property, and so not along Broadway, but on the sides, but it's still visible from Broadway, and so staff is recommending that that be removed. Generally, the Corridor Overlay District does not allow barbed wire fencing. And so that concludes staff report. Thank you.
Thank you, Florence. That brings us to the applicant's presentation. State your name and address for the record, please.
Good evening. My name is James Ramirez. My address is 5715 Medway Harbor in Sugar Land, Texas. Thank you, everybody, for having us here tonight and for your presence. We are proposing to put a collision repair facility at this location. Currently, we do have a collision repair facility that is Tesla and BMW certified. What we are proposing on this site is BMW and Mercedes certification. We have already been provisionally approved by Clear Lake, BMW, and Mercedes to put this here. We actually were asked by Mercedes-Benz, or by BMW North America, to put a collision site in this general area. I've been looking for a very long time. I did go to one neighbor. I should have went to all of them. Went to the automotive repair facility next door, and he was fine with it. Which actually is on the same technically partial land that's owned there. I do realize this was a drywall facility, but it's been mechanical next door. I am proposing that we may work on some Teslas there. I know one of the issues that was brought up during one of the interviews I had was if they were wrecked too hard, what happens with fires. I just wanted to assure everybody right now that's not going to happen. Tesla actually gives us the right to refuse any vehicle, and if we receive any vehicles that are hit too hard, we actually never receive it. So it will not even touch the ground. Other than that, anybody has any questions?
We may have questions later on, but right now it's we can't dialogue on it. So, thank you.
Understood. Thank you.
Okay, seeing that we've got applicant presentation, persons wishing to speak for or against, please go to the podium. Have you filled out a green sheet? Okay. And you've got 3 minutes, and state your name and address for the record.
My name is Diana Townsend. My address is 1411 Broadway Street. We own the music factory next door. And my main concern, I'm not upset about the business going in. I'm glad that we're encouraging to bring in new business to our area. It's been a long time coming for our end of town. So my main concern was the fact of the visual sight from where people park, our customers park at the back, in our back parking lot, customers coming in and out, students coming for lessons and stuff, and what they would see is a bunch of vehicles that have been demolished or whatever, and if that becomes like, I was concerned about it becoming like a junkyard of, vehicles needing to be worked on and being left out for everyone to see. If the city would allow them to have a privacy fence a little bit towards the back of the property, where not the front, to take away from Pearland's beautification program. So we just want some kind of little barrier back there in the back of the property, so that all our customers wouldn't be have to look at that every day. Our main concern. And thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, ma'am. All right. Anyone else wishing to speak for or against?
Sir, as you're part of the applicant team, absolutely hang around the podium.
Yeah.
Some members might want to talk to you, but you wouldn't go up there to speak as a citizen wishing to speak for or against.
All right. Asking for a third and final time, anyone to speak for or against this proposal? Seeing none, it opens up to commissioners' input.
Okay, I have a question. I mean, this site has been here for quite a long time before we have any drainage in place. I'm assuming, how long has this been built?
So I believe in the staff report, we talked about it being generally constructed between 83 and 92. As such, this is a heavily concreted site. With there being no additional building square footage that is proposed, there's not going to be any additional runoff or drainage requirements that are necessary.
So the runoff that is there could potentially drain to the creek and contaminate with the paints. I mean, how are we going to, I guess that's my question to you all. How are we going to control that? Since normal new development would have some type of drainage and it would tie it into TxDOT. So I'm looking specifically for what type of stormwater quality features or equipment you're going to use to prevent that contamination.
So from what I've seen on the property, there is a stormwater containment drains that have pre-existing. I don't own the property, so I'm not sure on that. But as far as like paint and everything, we have to contain it in fireboxes. We have oil water separators that are actually part of this process, because we do wash vehicles. It would be no different from a car wash in there for those chemicals.
You'd have to have a grit
yeah, it's
typically you'd have a grit trap in place. But as far as classifying the contaminants, we're required by the government and the state to have all different types of waste manifests and have them picked up separately, quarterly, depending on what's needed.
'Cause you're really close to the floodway, so my question is, if your building floods, how would you prevent those chemicals from entering into the system?
Well,
Do you have a-
they're in containment barrels. Like any paint waste, it's automatically put in a containment barrel. It's sealed.
Sealed grounded barrels that are lifted off the ground according with regulation. If it flooded, it would have to be flooded well over a foot.
Or more than that, actually. But to kind of ease your concerns there, the owner of the property, before I even approached her or before we went into this, one of my requirements was, did it flood during Harvey? The answer was no. It did not flood. And with the creek that's in the back, she said that they've actually expanded that. And if you look at the property, there's actually a lot more space before the end of the property.
Okay, does the city have any records of whether that was flooded during Harvey? Because a lot of that area did flood during Harvey.
Well, you got the best answer right here.
Okay, thank you. Do you have a topo survey of the site?
I do not.
Just curious.
Commissioner Hendricks, I want to make sure that I understand your question correctly so that if there's a potential condition attached, I can help with that or at least answer to City Council if they ask those questions. Are you concerned? I know it's probably not the best way to say it, but broken car comes onto the lot. Broken car could leak fluids. Is the question, if fluids leak on the lot and then it rains, what stops those fluids from leaking on the lot to go to the creek behind? Because it may just go into the into the stormwater facility.
But they
But
don't
that
have
outfalls to the creek, which means that any leaking fluids from this new use that was not there before is changed by the new use, even though the impervious ground cover is not changed. Am I understanding that correctly?
I think I just don't have enough information about how the drainage on the site drains currently and where it actually is going. So, yes, you're right. If vehicles do leak, there's all kinds of contaminants in the remodel or repair of vehicles. So that's I guess I just don't have enough information.
It's
to
not the
make a
paint
decision.
in the barrels, it's not their equipment, it's not the things that they're doing, it's the leaky fluid, so to speak.
It
that-
could be, I mean, how do you paint the cars? You got to spray it, right?
You do, and for these contaminants would be the grit traps. That's why, if you look, there is a mechanic shop right there, which I promise you, a mechanic shop deals with a lot more fluids than we do.
That would be infrastructure on site in the building that would have to be addressed during the building process. So I think that type of concern would be addressed with the building permit, but the leaky fluid concern, even though it's not caused by them and it's not, I mean, it's the nature of the operation, right? The
Correct.
vehicle's broken somehow, it's coming to your site.
Understood.
So if that is something that you want, I would just encourage you to either conditionally approve this or tie that as a condition to it, or postpone it until you get an answer to that question.
Okay, so how would you recommend that, at least for us or council, maybe in the future, that we say conditionally they can prove that if they have leaky contaminants, it's not going to go into the creek. It's going to be contained on site and taken care of. How could we, like, what document?
So I'm not an engineer, so it makes it a little bit more difficult for me, and I don't know if Francisco
Just
has a different name for
Maybe
it.
an engineer letter from somebody, possibly? I don't know.
Well, without a topo, not knowing where exactly it leads to, we wouldn't be able to have a correct answer, right? But I did recommend them obtaining a topo and reaching out to TxDOT as well. A lot of times TxDOT right away does have drainage going into it, or a portion of the drainage from the site allowed to go run off into TxDOT. So that was a recommendation from our last meeting.
So a potential condition, not knowing the name of the document that you're looking for, is that a motion to include a condition, a motion to amend including a condition that the applicant demonstrate that runoff will not be negatively affecting the stormwater caused by an increase or caused by a change in the use.
Right.
Because that's really the heart of the issue,
Yeah.
right? So leave it on them to figure out with their engineers what the adequate documentation would be. And of course, I would imagine that they would be working diligently towards getting that information prior to going to city council. And that wouldn't cause any delays. That would let it continue to go forward to the next meeting.
Yeah.
If that's what you were looking to do.
Yes.
So, like it was asked of me to go to TxDOT, originally I did, and I was told because we were not changing the ownership of the property, that they had nothing to do with this.
But they don't look at
But-
environmental
Yeah.
issues, so it's completely different.
Today I received a email stating they thought we were talking about the mechanic shop already.
So, Commissioner, if I may, gentlemen, so what's the protocol if a vehicle gets brought to the site and it does leak? You know, this is not anyone's fault, no one's placing blame, but, you know, you move the vehicle into the shop, you look, and there's an puddle of oil sitting there. What do y'all do?
Oh yeah, so we have oil absorbents that suck up everything on there. You have to use it and dispose of it properly. Other than that, it's just like changing your oil. You have a catch can, catches everything. You know,
Yeah,
the
because even if
oil
a condition does
absorbent-
get placed on it, it's not about it going to TxDOT or to the creek. We don't want that stuff in our water anywhere. And
Yeah.
so I think it's just a fair condition no matter what.
Can we add a condition that they plat the property? I feel like we need to know what true non-conforming we have if we don't know.
Is your microphone on, Commissioner McDonald? I'm just
Oh,
concerned that the recording might not be catching your
No, I was
concern.
wondering about, would it be appropriate to require a plat as part of, as a condition, so that we better understand any nonconformities that exist with current buildings or setbacks, et cetera, that may affect the property or adjacent property?
So I've not heard of anything that they're proposing that would reach a platting trigger as currently outlined. Theoretically, you could attach as a condition of the CUP that the property be platted. However, unless the platting of the property specifically relates to condition of approval, criteria for approval for a CUP, like it's not the use that's causing that.
Yeah, no, I know.
And it's not.
It's a stretch.
It is. I understand the concern, but if city council were to ask me, is that in the criteria, I would tell them, no, sir, it's not.
I understand, but I think, and I appreciate staff for pointing out the EDC requirements and bringing it up to date. I mean, I think a lot of the development on the east side of Pearland has been around for a long time, and the east side of Pearland, not East Pearland, the east side of Pearland, I think is behind in development because a lot of these buildings just continue to turn over without redevelopment. They're reused, which is nice, but from an aesthetic and a look and feel of the town, one of the reasons East Pearland looks different than West Pearland, and I think so. With the change in use, a lot of that kicks in, and I would just say maximize that as you can by the regulations, so that we continue to improve the look of the side of town.
I had the same concerns as the speaker that was, well, I wouldn't say neither for nor against. You were just needing additional information. I guess my concern was Broadway is a corridor overlay district, and I realize and I do want to state that I'm for reuse of these buildings. If we can get somebody in to occupy a building, I'd rather have a use than have the building sit empty. Even if we had to, I don't want to say bend the rules a little bit, but be flexible. I'd be for that. My concern is cars driving by. This is heavily visually, it's obstructed by the buildings themselves, but for a neighboring property, and then for some of those that pass by that look in, I didn't want that the look and feel of a bunch of cars that have been unfortunately wrecked, even though they're Beamers and Teslas. Still, I'd hate for it to be visible from the street. So, looking forward to staff's comments.
We are required per the manufacturer's agreement, once we certify with them, to not allow that to be within sight plane of the customers or the general public. The wrecked vehicles has to be moved out of sight of the customers. So when they're coming up, what they're seeing are the fixed cars, the finished product, and the presentability of the product.
And kind of to address your concern with the privacy fence. So also, like on our fencing now, we have to put like a black mesh, so nobody sees the high-end cars, the damaged cars.
So our city rules, is it chain link with a black mesh? Is that allowable in that area, or do we go wooden fence? Where are we at with that on city rules?
So previously, we've had conversations with the applicant on meeting the corridor overlay district standards for the front portion of the fence, because that's the portion that is visible from Broadway. That portion of the fence would have to be a decorative fence. The side of the property, though, can be a chain link fence, as that's what's allowed within a commercial zoning district. Two things before I turn it back over. This site plan does not show the fire lanes. So the parking that is shown here on the, I guess it would be the east property line, but south on the screen, this area is going to have the fire lane wrap around, so that way the access can be provided for emergency services to come into the property and circle around. That's going to keep any vehicles from being stored on this side. Any vehicles from being stored, and for that being a storage area to be free and clear. So the site plan that is on the screen was prior to the applicant receiving that clarification and discussion last week or the week before. Honestly, the weeks kind of run together at this point. But just want to point that out, that this is an older iteration of the site plan, and that that storage up close to the music factory wouldn't be an ability of the site.
In relation to the fencing, as the chain link is allowed on the sides and towards the rear of the property, the privacy slats or the mesh may be possible. I don't think anybody's going to require it be a material that is a substantial burden or cost, but it will address the neighbor's concern about their employees and their visitors or whoever it may be seeing inside there. And it also sounds like the applicant has requirements from their
manufacturers
to make sure that those things are private as well. So if you wanted to include that as a condition, because that is an adjacency issue, it seems like it would relate, you just make sure that there is some sort of privacy from the adjacent properties, I think would be the way to include a condition of that sort. And it sounds like it's a requirement they'd be willing to
it's
comply with
happening
anyhow.
either way.
I don't recall who set the motion. I think it was Commissioner Dugas and McDonald second. But I'd like to, staff is already bringing up conditions. I would like to add or ask for those conditions and then add a fourth one, which is to screen the adjacency or adjacent parcel with is opaque the right word?
I would recommend an approved privacy fence.
An approved privacy fence for the adjacent owner properties. But I'm saying that instead of.
Yes, sir. So right now, I've heard two potential motions, and then we're still in the discussions phase, so I don't know if anybody else had any other issues that they wanted to address. So Commissioner Dugas, I had you as the original person who made the motion, and if you are willing to, you may say so moved afterwards if you agree with both conditions. The first is so there are three things. First, the staff recommended conditions as displayed in the applicant packet 1 through 3. Second is that the fencing on the side yards include privacy fencing as approved by the City of Pearland and in accordance with its codes. And then the third is that the applicant demonstrate that the proposed change of use will not negatively affect stormwater runoff.
Yeah, so moved.
Second.
So now, because the original person who made the motion has amended his motion or made that change, and the person who seconded agreed with it, you would actually be voting on the final motion as it's been amended.
All right, I'm going to call for the vote. All those in favor signal by raising your right hand. All those opposed, same sign. Carries 7-0. All right, seeing that was city council update.
Thank you. Thank you. Both of these gentlemen live here, by the way.
Gonna have to talk to that Sugarland person into moving over closer, I'm just saying. Have a good evening.
Even more success.
All right, so on the City Council's March 25th meeting, they had that CUP that y'all saw earlier in March for the expansion of the church. That got approved by council by a 7-0 vote. As Lawrence previously mentioned, we also had that extension of the approval for the gas station at McCowa and McCard. That passed after a brief discussion about the floodway with a 6-1 vote. And they are working through commercial permit review. So we hope to see that one, that permit get approved and out the door soon. On for the second reading was the update and amendments to the Pearland Town Center. There were a variety of people that spoke, and the history was rehashed on that, on the full history of the site. Not just the brief history of the residential types of development that have looked to get approved there. After everything was said and done, council took a vote and ended up with a 4-3 approval on that. So the apartments, the Pelican Apartments, did get approved by council. And that was everything that was on city council's agenda.
Can I ask who gave the history?
I did as good of a job as I could. I would not have given as good of a history.
No.
as
I thought you meant the mayor or one of the council members.
I mean, it was
There was dialogue amongst city council.
I'm gonna have to go back and watch that now.
All right, that brings us to Commissioner's Activity Report. Anybody got anything to report?
Just one thing real quick. I noticed the meetings were real fast when I was in the room, and I was out of the room. Y'all talked to. I'm just saying. So y'all been blaming me for. I'm throwing it out there.
Okay, one thing that I want to bring up is on our next, we got a City Council and P&Z joint workshop on April the 8th.
So that one actually got postponed.
This is the one that got postponed to May the
13th.
13th?
Yeah.
Okay.
You'll have both a May 13th and a May 20th
Okay.
workshops.
All right. So, but we have a P&Z meeting on April the 15th, 2024. Now, that is the same day. I don't know how many of y'all are planning on playing in Mayor Cole's charity golf tournament. It's for the All-Inclusive Park charity that he does every year. So I'll be here, but I may be dressed in golf attire.
Just wear sunscreen.
I wear sunscreen. And but
Hey, Daryl, you've dressed up as Santa Claus before, so.
well,
hey,
that's true.
You know,
Full Caddyshack.
it's okay.
Expectations aren't that high anyway.
All right. Anybody know any reason they can't be here? All right. Ian?
Could I say one thing about the postponement? What I did, I was looking at the schedule, and I called Miss Jennifer. What I noticed is the published calendar dates for our workshops are different than April 8th and May 13th, and I just am throwing that out there that I know other people look at it and think just.
So we do our absolute best to be as business friendly as possible, and when we see an opportunity that council has a night open, we try to shoehorn something in.
Okay. All right. If anybody doesn't have anything else, I'm going to close this meeting at 8:49.